In this video, we're going to explore the two faces of self and some of their implications, and so inside and outside of the math of identity. So the first thing to understand is the doorway into the identity. We have the one, the uninterrupted whole. We have the self. We have the witness. There's no name. There's no language. There's presence. But it is an unconscious presence in the sense we cannot speak about it. It's beyond words. And so we enter the domain of the ego. Now, the ego is that which identifies, which attaches to the pattern, our pattern, of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being. Meaning everyone has a pattern of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being. Even if it's a pattern of disrupting the pattern every hour or every day. I'm going to do something different today. I'm going to do something different today. I'm going to do something different today. That's a pattern. So the pattern is within language, is within time, is within space. It has a measurement. It has a dimension. So we take the one, and let's say we divide the one into three, heart, mind, and body, for example. It's arbitrary, but it works. Heart, mind, body. We now have a mathematical framework. The one has become three. We can now say 3 plus 3, 3 times 3, 3 minus 1, right? We can pretend. They're not real. You don't have the heart without the body and the mind. You don't have the mind without the body and the heart. It's still an interdependent ecology, but it's refracted, it's divided into three distinctions, heart, mind, and body. We now have something predictable. We now have something mathematical. We can predict that 3 times 3 always equals 9. We can also predict that we can travel in this direction, make a concave angle turn here, and then we will be traveling in this direction. And do the same here, and we will be traveling in this existent direction. And in this, we have a circle, right? We have a progression around the sphere, around the circle. We have a pattern. If we're traveling at 10 miles an hour, we can then say that, if this is 1 mile long and this is 1 mile long, etc., we can then say that, well, this is, it's going to take us 1/10 of an hour, 1/10 of an hour, 1/10 of an hour, unless we change things. So we're now entering determinism. We're going from indeterminism into determinism through a system. And let's say this is our pattern of feeling, and then we have another pattern of thinking that's like this. And then there's another pattern of thinking that's polarizing, that's divisive. So we're just going from one to the other, one to the other. Let's say we have an asymmetrical pattern that we get all the way over to here and then come back here and go over to here and get back up here and go over to here. And we're doing that rather rapidly. That could be tunnel vision. I've got to get to work. I'm not sure if I can. I've got to get to work. I'm not sure if I can. I've got to get to work. I'm not sure if I can. It's a very rapid pattern. And this pattern, this synergy of patterns, is what the ego identifies with. I am this thought. I am that feeling. You hurt my feeling. That's my feeling. That's your feeling. The ego is that which identifies, clenches with, on, to a pattern of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being. And having done so, then defends the pattern. That's my thought. Don't show disrespect to it. That's my land. Get off my land. That's my feeling. Don't do that to my feeling. Do this to my feeling. My feeling likes this. My feeling likes it. Not a feeling likes it. The feeling likes it. It's not mine, but the feeling likes it. My feeling likes it. You hurt my feelings. And you interrupted my project. And you ruined my plan. Right? My pattern was disrupted, was in some way affected by your pattern. You have a pattern of doing and this, and I have a pattern of this, and you overstepped the boundary of my identity, of my pattern. So to the ego, that's all it is, right? It is the pattern. And so when the pattern is disrupted, the ego is traumatized, the ego is violated, the ego dies. And so it is the introduction of the ego, the I, that identifies with the pattern, that is the basis for violation, for friction, etc., etc. Because without the identity, there are just patterns of energy in the world that interact with patterns of energy in the world. And there's no one's I. That's, if a stream is flowing this way and somebody digs a trench and now the stream is flowing that way, if there's no I to the old stream that says that I'm this stream and you just changed me, if there's just energy flowing, then some energy did this and some energy did this, there's no I. There's no good and bad. There's no change because I am the shovel, I am the person, I am the water, I am the stream. I interacted with myself. The one interacted with the one, and the one lives because all life is about rhythm. All life is about change. All life is about breath. To breathe is to change, right? To hold my breath is to die. To hold the pattern too tightly is to die, right? A dead identity, out of sync with the ever-changing ecology around us. So, once we enter language, once we enter thought, once we identify with the thought, we are in the domain of mathematics. We are in the domain of identity. We are in the domain of space and time. We are in the domain of measurements. That's all happening inside the sphere, right? The one, the uninterrupted whole, is still there, and that consciousness is still functioning. But the ego consciousness, the mathematical, the linguistic consciousness is functioning inside the one, inside the whole. And it's functioning through consciousness, identity, attachment, possessiveness, through founded on language, mathematical language, geometric language, spatial language, verbal language. Because all language, you see, mathematical language, you take the one, this is how you get time. You take one, everything is. There's no time. Everything is. And you divide it Now you have time. You've divided the circle into 12 points, and now you just track the movement of energy from one point to the next, and you divide it into smaller bits. But now you have time. You take space. Space is circular, right? The universe goes out in that direction as far as it goes out in that direction, as far as it goes out in that direction, right? The universe is a sphere. The possibility field is a sphere. So, and we are always in the center. Wherever you are on the surface of a sphere, it goes out equally in all directions, right? But you can start measuring using increments as you traverse the sphere. The measurements have words. If they don't have words, they don't have thoughts. If they don't have words and thoughts, they don't exist in human consciousness. The measurements are really words, and they're invented, right? Nothing exists. Everything exists. Let's invent a measurement. How big, right? Should we invent a measurement this big, 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 this big? How big? It's arbitrary. We can say one hand, it's 5 hands long. Well, how long is a hand? Well, it's this long, okay? It's 5 hands long, right? Of your hands, but not my hands. It's language. Now, when you're in the domain, when you're inside the math, when you're inside human consciousness, there's language, there's mathematics, there's cause and effect, there's predictability. I mean, let's start out on this 5-pointed star here. So we're starting off heading, let's call it northwest, right? Let's call this west, we'll call this north. So we're heading off northwest. So where are we going to go next, right? Well, if it's a 5-pointed star, that's language, right? Then it has to go here. So now we're going southeast, slightly southeast. Then we're going slightly northeast, right? That's predictable. And if we're going 2 miles an hour and we keep a steady pace, that's predictable. You head over here. And you head over to here. Then you do it all over again. That's what makes it a pattern, right? Otherwise, it loses its shape. It's no longer a 5-pointed star. If right here it moves over to here, it's no longer a 5-pointed star. You know, to keep in its concept, it is a predictable thing. But the thought comes first. A 5-pointed star. We have a thought of what a point is. We have a thought of what 5 is. And then within that paradigm, it emerges. But is it real, right? Once you decide what is good and what's bad, once you decide what's rude and what's polite, once you decide what's up and what's down, once you decide that the right way to respond to being affronted is to have a duel, you know, that was one whole period of time where the right thing to respond, if someone affronted your identity, was you would challenge them to a duel, to kill one another, right? and then you would regain your dignity, the pristine, your identity, your pattern of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being would regain its tarnish, would no longer be tarnished. So, that's like saying, I am a 5-pointed star. That's me. And then you say, I am a straight line. And say the straight line intersects with the 5-pointed star. And we say, that's a violation. You have violated my identity. Retract the line. Now the person says, no, you have violated you've crossed my line several times, right? So now you can have a fight to the death in a cult that says that the winner is better than the loser, which you have to have a cult that says that, otherwise a fight to the death doesn't make any sense. So what I want to point out, and we're starting off geometrically, but when we say, I am a Methodist, and you say you're a Jew, and I say I'm a vegetarian Methodist, and you say you're a carnivore Jew, and I say I believe in sticking up to tyranny, and you say you're a pacifist carnivore Jew, and I say that the right thing to do is to unite, and you say that each to his own, right? We've got this tangled mess of stuff. The ego does not like this, right? Because it's, what do you make of this? That's not organized. I can't make, he's a pacifist, I have a right to this, you have a right to that. One thing we want to do is have people who are different from us go away. If they would just go and do their thing in their own country and then just leave my nice shape, where before you ruined it, I just had a nice, symmetrical, predictable shape. Now you've ruined it, right? I am that, and you've marred it, and I don't know what to do. You're that, and I'm this, and let's just get rid of the others. We don't want foreigners around here, or kill them. Now I've got control of who I am, right? My shape is not being insulted, violated, tarnished, muddied, confused. I'm confused. I thought I was a tough, rugged, masculine, this, and you're giving me a hug. I don't know what that is. What's that? That's not me. Go away. This is my identity. This is my pattern. What next? But my point is that when you're in pattern, when you're in ego, when you're in identity, people do what they do because that's what they do. And they continue because that's what they did before. They did it before because that's who they are. And that's who they are, so that's what they do, right? And it just goes round and round. People their identities don't change very much most of the time. And the more traumatized a culture is, the less the people in the culture want to change, right? So the more traumatized a culture is, the more resistance to change there is, the more fear of the unknown there is. And so one of the things that tends to lead to is data manipulation, right? People like to think they're rational in a science-based cult. They like to think they're rational, but they're really just holding on to their identity. And so in that framework, they may start distorting the facts, or leaving out this fact, adding in this fact so that they can stay the same. I am that I am, I do that I do this because of this, I this because that's who I am, and that's the way it'll always be, right? And I've warded off my fear of the unknown. Now, presence is the unstructured space, is the witness before it has been broken, right? We don't lose that part just because we've entered measurement, time, space, names, language, right? Because every language just takes the one and cuts it up into bits. We cut space up into a grid. We cut time up into a grid. We cut reality into words. Cloud, hand, this, that, the other. We cut them all up. And then we put them back together again in odd ways and leave bits out. And that becomes our conscious reality. But the witness transcends that because the witness comes before the world was cut up into language, cut up into bits, and the witness lasts beyond the names, the measurements, the structures, the paradigms that are the identity. The ego dies as the pattern dies, or changes as the pattern changes. But the witness was there before the ego and is there after the ego, and can bring presence, can bring awareness, can bring humility, can hold a space for the ego to change its identity, you know. There are some situations where there's a very big identity that's coming in. Kind of, let's imagine a very large truck, and it's going to be moving right here. It's not there, it's slowly backing up, it's going to be moving right there. Well, to an ego with no space, with no witness, this is a fight to the death, right? I'm going to die anyway if I change. I won't know who I am. So the ego will fight, right? But if you've ever stood, you know, in the pavement as a large truck backs into you, you realize it's not a winning proposition. This is very upsetting for the ego. But it's space, it's witnessing that allows something like this to take place. Even though it's not fair, according to the ego. But what if you just moved the identity like that? And the gap basically is where the item then moved in. Well, if I have to keep moving, if I'm insecure, right? Says the ego. But the pattern of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being, the pattern of human consciousness, is ultimately to serve, to be in service to reality, to life, to what is. And so we are the most resilient, the most secure, the strongest when we cultivate the witness, when we cultivate presence, the infinite space that can be the infinite possibility field. And then we are aware of our pattern of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being. And we're aware of the ecology and the environment that we're in. And we have the freedom to hold the ego identity, to give safety and love to the ego, while in one environment we take this shape. In another environment we take this shape. In another environment we take this shape. In another environment we take this shape. Understanding that different shapes, different patterns of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being allow us to connect and integrate in different ways with our reality, with other people. At each moment, we always are in the witness. We are in the space before words, before language, before identity. It never disappears. But it is often in cultivating deep presence, deep space, that we become conscious of the contrast of the shape of our identity, and held in the place of infinite space in infinite possibilities, and held in the awareness of our identity, we can allow new forms. We can allow our identity to change. We can trust the infinite space that no matter what happens, there will be a shape. There will be a pattern that emerges of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being. And that pattern can change. That pattern can grow. That pattern is the foundation of human consciousness.